11. And then that gives you that's where I'm coming up with the 1.3.
Okay, so my intention is I want to better understand if any other than just pure student loss, if either of those two programs themselves are running at a loss, is what my intention is. Is the 1.3 million, as you look at the whole picture, is a result only of the loss of students, or is it within the two programs a result of running the program in a negative within only the loss of the program?
Right.
Are either of those two programs running within a loss?
No, they're very profitable.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. So so that analogy gives the impression from somebody who doesn't understand it that the 1.3 million in shared services and Renaissance virtual, that we could be running those programs at a loss. And I want to make sure that the public understands that the loss that we're seeing in that is more directly associated just to the loss of students, not a program inefficiency.
That's a very good clarification. So I'm just, don't quote me because I'm doing that the math in my head. But if we lost 294 brick and mortar students times 8,000, I would have around 2.5 million that we would have lost by these increases in Renaissance virtual and shared service. Even though the FTE is not, we don't get 100% of the FTE, it's reducing the hit to the school district by 1.2 million. So that's a very good clarification.
And in reality, those two programs are starving off that loss to be much greater than it already is.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.
So, Dr. Ryan, I'm, it was a bit shocking, of course, to see that graph, that number drop down of our brick and mortar students, obviously understanding, that many of them transferred. And we've talked about this sort of threshold quite a bit, I think, in recent years of 7,000 being, kind of our ideal efficiency. And so given the unknowns of this year and even next year and maybe even the year beyond, do you have some thoughts or maybe just some caution or some comfort maybe for the board of what we need to just sort of be maybe not worried about or just hesitant on for the next couple of years, I would say, as we look at numbers and maybe not worry too much about that 7,000 as being kind of a panic threshold if we don't come back to it right away? Do you know what I mean? Because I know you've been worried about efficiencies of programs and, if we drop too much below that 7,000. Where's your thinking there?
I can hear you. I can completely understand your question, President Horst. And the reality of our situation is that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs over the next probably 12 to 24 months easily. And I would imagine at that point, we'll start to settle back into whatever the new normal is, because normal is a relative term. I don't know if we'll ever go back exactly like we were pre-COVID. I don't know if we should go exactly back to what we were pre-COVID. I think a lot of families who have tasted some alternative programming may gravitate to stay in alternative programming. And we as a school district need to be able to meet their needs, whether it wasn't a formerly classic brick and mortar, a exclusively distance learning type program, or potentially a mix between the two. I think that really that COVID's been a game changer in some positive ways. And I think that although, kind of our call to action has been, we want our students back in school face-to-face, that works for, I would say, a majority of our students, but it might not work for all students. And I can tell you it doesn't. So that being said, I do see that operational efficiency for our school districts in terms of breadth of programming being around 7,000, meaning that, when you have roughly 7,000 students, we can offer a kind of a next level up caliber of programming when it comes to just sheer volume of different programs. A handful of kids interested in any one of our programs on the magnitude of 7,000 is enough to really give it economy of scale that we can run things that many smaller school districts can't do. So long term, would that, if there was a downward pressure on over enrollment, impact the overall learning environment for all kids? Absolutely. But at the same time, I'd also say short term, I don't see that as being a problem. couple things have confluence into it. Not only do we have a volatility within our programming and enrollment, but we also have some opportunities in terms of supports from the state and federal government right now that aren't normally available to schools as our nation as a whole looks to reclaim and rebuild post-COVID in support of education and a lot of other different areas. And I feel like, at least in my conversation with our legislators, both local and federally, that at least for the short term, next 12 to 24 months, I would hope that we would be able to continue kind of an infusion of one-time or short-term COVID support money and resources that's very geared towards bringing the entire country and our community and our schools back online and making an environment where our students can really propel their learning and their experience in school further. So I'm not concerned in the immediate. I don't believe that we have a financial crunch. And I think that also collaterally, Clarkson has always been very aggressive in terms of looking at alternative programming in a larger sense for the overall fiscal well-being of our school district. In other words, we have a lot of cottage industries and programming and cooperative efforts that we work with private schools, with homeschool groups. We really look to try to provide a lot of different broader opportunities, which in some cases generate revenue that then support the brick and mortar programs that we offer here back in Clarkston. So short term, I'm very confident that we're on very stable footing. And I think that long term, I think we need to keep light on our feet. I think we need to make sure that we're listening and asking questions to our community and to our students and to our staff of what kind of programming that they see and want as we go into the future. I feel very strongly that we can continue to keep up. I think the big mistake would either to be falling back into old ways that we're just going to recreate 2017 or 18 and move on. I don't think that's the reality of our situation. And I think if we do that, not only will we be well served, but I think that our programming will continue to grow in very consistent way with our mission and vision. And I'm excited to see how we move forward. Short term, looking at the balance sheets right now for Clarkson schools and where we are in terms of contracts and our obligations, I feel very strongly that we're in a good position to meet all those obligations, and I have no fear of any kind of insolvency or uncertainty in any kind of programming. And I plan to use that to continue to support our families in their decision making as they look over the next couple of years of picking programs. And to do that, I need to keep as many different options open, and I think that's going to be part of our mission as well. So on the whole, I know it kind of probably gave you a long-winded answer to your question, but obviously I hope you see I put a lot of thought into this already. It's definitely a team effort with Nancy Mahoney and John Lucido and our entire team. We really get excited about the different kind of opportunities and what the future holds. And our kind of mantra has been, what do we learn from this? And it's on a daily basis sometimes on how we can apply that learning into decisions moving forward. So more to come, but I'm very hopeful and high for Clarkson in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Lucido, as well. Trustees, anyone else? Comments or questions? All right. Thank you. We'll move on to action items. Action item 6.1 is approval of personnel changes. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the personnel changes as listed in the attached sheets.
Support.
Any questions or discussion on the personnel changes? And seeing none, Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call, please? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Heyer,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 6.2 is approval of resolutions for our open enrollment programs. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the resolutions authorizing limited open enrollment for kindergarten young fives and unlimited open enrollment for career immersion programs, CSM Tech Academy, International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, online and blended learning, and construction technology for the 2021-22 school year as presented.
Support.
Any questions or discussion from the board? And just reminding everyone, we are simply repeating the programs from last year, which for our kindergarten young fives would include 25 slots again. And as you can see, unlimited for the other programs. All right, seeing no questions or further discussion, Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Hire,
Yes.
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 6.3 is approval of the extended COVID-19 learning plan. May I have a motion, please?
I move the Board of Education approves the district's extended COVID-19 learning plan as presented.
Support.
This is our monthly approval for the legislature. And I believe the only update this month is that we have actually returned, the notation that we have actually returned to full-time instruction with the 4 days at the secondary level. Are there any further questions or discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mr. Hire,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 6.2 is approval of the school bus purchase. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the bid to purchase 32 new school buses from Hoekstra Transportation in the amount of $2,682,125 and refinancing of 22 of our current school buses in the amount of $1,033,274 for a total amount of $3,715,399.
Support.
I know there were some additional discussion, presented shared with the board in our weekend review over the weekend. So at this time, are there any questions, discussions, anything that can be clarified? I know Mr. Goodman is holding here. If he can provide an overview or answer any questions from the board.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank Mr. Goodman and Ms. Rogers. This makes perfect sense to me to spread these out over more than 1 year. And the fact that we got that additional 1 year bumper to bumper warranty makes it, I think, a no brainer. So thank you for that, for those efforts and for this proposal.
All right, seeing no other questions or comments, Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mr. Hire,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 6.5 is approval of the asbestos abatement bid. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves a contract with Total Environmental Services LLC in the amount of $44,620, with a contingency in the amount of $4,500 for a total of $49,120 as presented.
Support.
Any questions or discussion for the board or for Mr. Goodman, who is online with us tonight? All right, seeing none, Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Mr. Hire,
Yes.
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 6.6 is approval of resolution to authorize issuance and delegate sale of 2021 refunding bonds. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the attached resolution authorizing the issuance and delegating the sale of Clarkston Community Schools 2021 refunding bonds as presented.
Support.
Any questions or discussion from the board? And this kind of refunding is something we undertake from time to time when markets are favorable. And I know there was an additional piece of information provided today. I don't know if Ms. Rogers wants to comment on that, but in terms of savings, that was a question that had been raised by the board over the weekend as an additional point of clarification that that this will save taxpayers. I believe it was $1.3 million over the course of next 10 years. Is that correct, Mrs. Rogers? Did I get is that right from my memory?
Yes, it'll get you through 2030, and it's a savings, yeah, of 1.3 million over those 10 years.
Okay.
And the interest rate, they're expecting to go from 3% currently to 1.19%. That was the other question.
Great. Any other questions or follow-up from the board? All right, seeing none. Mrs. McLean? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mr. Heyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 6.7 is approval of vote for the Michigan Association of School Boards Board of Directors. And we have 4 candidates to consider, and I think procedurally we decided we would take a motion on a candidate and then we'll be able to discuss. So may I have a motion from the floor, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves Bridget McQuiston as the MASB Region 8 Board of Directors seat as presented.
Support.
What questions or discussion from the board to consider Birgit McQuiston from Lake Orion?
I just say that as my time on the MASB Board of Directors, we've really tried to increase participation. So when I was first elected, I got a phone call and it was a little bit of arm twisting, and we haven't had a lot of people running for these seats. So it's great to see 4 qualified candidates that could certainly do the job. And I hope everybody stays involved, and, you know, as there's a, you know, kind of openings and committee availability to spend their time and learn some things and offer some things, I think that'll be great for all of these candidates in our area in the future.
Madam President, I agree with Mr. Heyer. It's not very normal when we get to see 4 candidates come forward for a volunteer position on top of the position that they already serve in their local district, and most likely on some county boards also for most of these people. I had the opportunity of getting to listen to 3 of the 4 at a recent GRC meeting, which is Government Relations Committee of the county board. And every single one of them were very qualified candidates to serve us at the state level. I would agree that the recommendation of Birgit for this position is a fabulous recommendation. She has fabulous organizational skills. All of them, their hearts are in the right place. Gina comes with a family history of board service from her father-in-law and advocacy in her community. Mary is fairly new to her board, has taken on the work that she does in her community full strength with all her heart. And Sandra is currently serving as a co-chairperson on the county board for DEI and working on a 21-day challenge for us. So I don't think that we could go wrong by choosing any one of these 4 excellent candidates, but I do affirm that Birgit would be a great representation from this board. Thank you. And I think we're lucky in Clarkston, among the 7 of us, to have 2 people
among our own trustees who serve both at the county level and the state level, Mrs. McGinnis and Mr. Heyer already. So I think our board is very visible and very committed. So, I mean, we're very fortunate to have leadership here in our own community representing us beyond Clarkston. Mr. Heyer, president-elect of the statewide association. So we're very fortunate there. Anyone else want to add any comments here about the candidate who's on the table? No. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead. We'll put it to a vote then. Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
There we
Ms.
go.
Catalina,
Yes.
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Heyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, the motion carries. Item 6.8 is approval of resolution to permit school boards to meet in person. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the attached resolution requesting permission for school boards to meet in person as presented.
Support.
So Mr. Need and I wanted to bring this resolution forward, the text of which was provided by the Michigan Association of School Boards. Now, obviously approving this resolution doesn't allow us to meet in person, as last week the prohibition of such was continued through March by order of the state health department. But I think that several circumstances have, continued to put pressure on us to want to try to change that circumstance. A couple of very recent ones, including several emails that we received as a board, which I obviously copy all of you on when I respond to parents, just ahead of our latest return to full face-to-face learning. And several parents mentioned specifically they were concerned about the return because we were continuing to meet in person. This was also mentioned specifically last fall when we were getting ready to return in person, and parents questioned the safety of it while the board continued to meet in this format. So I'm very troubled by the mixed message that this sends to our community when we as the leaders make decisions such as sending our staff and our students back into the buildings and say that we're doing everything we can to make it safe to do so. Yet our hands are tied from being the example for our community and our staff that I think we should be. I think that the data supports us doing that. And again, while voting to approve this resolution won't change our minds on that, I think it sends the message that we believe we believe that the science supports it, and we hope that our state will make a different decision. So that's why I wanted to put that resolution before you tonight, and I certainly welcome any questions or other discussion and other opinions that we might have here.
I don't think we should pass this resolution. I don't think we have any business taking a position on this. I think we have to rely on our state to give us guidance for these kinds of things. We have said very strongly all along as a board, we want to prioritize in-person instruction, and we have encouraged our community not to do things that would jeopardize that. So having 20 or 30 or whatever our capacity as audience members coming in for a board meeting seems to fly in the face of prioritizing in-person instruction. If we were able to meet in person, I think our leadership has made decisions on our behalf when it is appropriate and when we're able to do that, and we've done that. I personally feel like, our mission as a board is to represent our community. We do that in a transparent way and an accessible way to make sure our community knows what's going on and make sure we can hear from our community and interact with them appropriately. And I feel like given the sort of weird hybrid kind of meetings that we have done when we've been in person, I feel like we're more transparent and more accessible in the virtual format. And I know we have a choice if we're able to be in person to do that virtually, but if I put my advocacy hat on, I feel like we're advocating something based on a feeling of wanting to not send a mixed message and not based on any real data. So if we had data that showed like somehow we were going to be more efficient by meeting in person, or somehow that was going to give our community more confidence, which, certainly in the fall, I think that was more true than it is now. I think we've gotten to a point where, the pandemic and the procedures, we're used to them. We've perfected them as much as they can possibly be perfected, I think. I mean, we're certainly fine tuning them, but there's a comfort level with what we're doing now. So I don't know that it's a case of, being afraid to meet in person. I think, why would we subject an audience to, come in and potentially meet in person? I feel like we have way more engagement in this format. So I think taking a position as a school board to say, hey, we need to meet in person, I think is outside of our lane in terms of what we need as a community. And I think MASB put this together because there are districts that felt like they needed to pass something. So we came up with some sample language. And I would say in Clarkston, for us, I don't know that we need to pass something. So I am not in favor of the resolution.
Madam President, I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Heyer. The other thing that couple other thoughts I have, I agree with the priority part of it. So I'm on the Save My Spot with the county for a vaccine, my choice. But you know what? I didn't select school or teacher because I'm not a teacher. I'm not in contact with a classroom full of students. So yes, I could have, and I could have showed my badge that I work at Oakland or I'm a school board trustee, which nobody would have known the difference in Clarkston, and taken a spot of a teacher or a nurse or somebody else who is a frontline worker. I don't see our priority, it being a priority that we be in person in the boardroom, because I actually felt that it was a little bit more cumbersome for our community to hear us, to ensure that our technology worked at the capacity that we needed it to be. I'm already seeing that our attendance is already dropping in our meetings. Our community has gotten comfortable. And I just think that a few more people are going to drop off again if we go in person. For what reason? Again, for a feeling thing. I don't see it as a priority. I do not want to take the place of a teacher when it comes to the vaccine. And I just think that passing this resolution isn't based in a data format. It's more based on a comparison that's not equal, an apples and oranges. A teacher being in the classroom, having access to a first line vaccine versus myself being a board member. I feel we can conduct business as equally here virtually as we can in a setting in the board office with masks on, with us in distance. And I just feel that when the time is right, when it's right for us to be back in the building and be the lower priority employees of doing so, then I'm more than happy to be there. But I don't think that measuring what we bring to the table in physical presence being in the board office compares to the presence of teachers in a classroom and teachers and students in a classroom. So while I'm more than happy and eager to get back to in person, I just don't feel the need to pass this resolution and support it. Thank you.
Mr. Need?
Yeah, I do support the resolution. I don't view it, well, first of all, with regard to data, I'm not sure where we're going to find data on efficiency of virtual school board meetings versus in-person school board meetings. So if you're searching for data, I don't think you're ever going to find it. I'm also not comparing ourselves necessarily with in-person teaching in a classroom. But when you look at all of the activities that are allowed under the latest health department order, restaurants, casinos, virtually every other kind of organization is allowed except in-person public board meetings. That makes no sense to me. Finally, this resolution simply gives us the option to opt in, opt out, to hold it virtually, remote, hybrid, in-person, whatever. I view that as being very much consistent with my belief that decisions ought to be made at the local level, and preserving our option, our right to choose, rather than having it dictated as to us from the health department order, the data which supporting remote school board meetings I have not seen. So I am also in support of the resolution.
Mr. Need, I would just add that the data was more about the safety of having 20 public come in and distance in our boardroom and be in that environment. And I would say, I wholeheartedly support local control, but I have no basis to supplant my judgment for the Department of Health and Human Services. And which is why I don't think as a school board, this sort of safety call is in our lane.
And I guess I saw us categorically as a government agency, and I watch our legislature, our state legislature meet, and I don't understand the inconsistency between a body like that and a body like ours. And I look at our board office as a whole. I mean, we have 55 employees reporting to that building every single day. And they're there in person every single day doing the business of the district. And I look at that building and I think we've told them it's safe to do that. We've asked them to do that. And that's where I feel like
And if
there's a line there.
If we wanted to pass a resolution that says, please explain your decision to us and why it's inconsistent, I would be in favor of the explanation, but I have no basis to say, hey, we need in-person meetings. So let's, have the optics be such that we can meet in person if we want to. Like, I just don't see where that serves. I don't know what we're serving. What good are we serving by doing that is my hesitancy. And I'm fine to vote, and I will vote the way I want to vote.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to prolong it. We can go ahead
Nope.
with it.
I just wanted everyone to have their say. Would anyone else like to share an opinion? Any questions?
Sure. I do think my perception is a little bit different than Mrs. McGinnis and Mr. Hires. I think during our virtual meetings, there was far less discussion and far less participation from board members than we typically had in person, even with our kind of bizarro, hybrid virtual meet or board meetings that we had before. This is an exception. I think the debate we've had on this is some of the most debate that we've had on any issue over the last several months. So, but again, people need to vote their own conscience. So I'd still support the resolution.
Mrs. Crane, please go ahead.
Yes, so I had read this earlier and was kind of waffling back and forth. So it's very interesting to hear both sides of it because I agree, Mr. Need. I feel like we have not had a lot of discussion or debate in this format. But I feel as a board, we get along fairly well and are pretty like-minded anyways. So there hasn't been a lot of debate and conflict at all. So while I agree that I think one of the most important things that we've asked the community to do is to continue taking safety measures. Let's not just start throwing caution to the wind because people are getting the vaccine and we're moving towards immunity. I think that we can, and we have, like you said, invited people into the building safely. I think we have done all of our meetings when we were in person safely. So I am in support of the resolution.
All right. If there's no more comments or discussion, Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Egan.
Mrs. McLean, could you say that again? You were a bit muffled.
Yes, I'm sorry. Mrs. Egan.
And Mrs. Egan is muted.
I'm sorry. Yes. Mrs. McGinnis.
No.
Mr. Need.
Yes.
Mrs. Crane.
Yes.
Ms. Catalina.
Yes.
Mr. Hire.
No.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes. The motion carries. And that resolution will be forwarded on to then the governor and the MDHHS and a copy to MASB at their request. All right, item 7 is report items. There are none tonight. Item 8 is discussion items. There are none. Item 9 is now citizen comments, and citizens are welcome to address the board on any topic at this point on the agenda. Let me switch over to our attendees this evening. If anyone wishes to address the board, now is the time to indicate your interest in doing so. And you remember to click on your participants icon and then the raise hand feature. Mrs. McLean, I'm not seeing anyone indicate that they wish to address the board this evening. Am I missing it?
No, I don't see anyone either.
Okay. Then we will continue on. Information items. Our next Board of Education meeting right now is Monday, March 8th. It will be scheduled then for 5:30 under the current executive order virtually. And then item 10, or item 11 is adjournment. May I have a motion, please?
I move to adjourn.
Support.
Mrs. McLean, one final roll call vote. Very busy roll call vote this evening.
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mr. Heyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes, motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.